And good morning again, gang. Here we are with our second problem example, and this is once again percent of a percent. It's something similar to what we did last class, but I just want to clarify. What I'm looking at is question number 6 here on page 38. It says 40% of the students at Rockledge Middle School are musicians. 75% of those musicians have to read sheet music when they play their instruments. If 38 of the students can play their instruments without reading sheet music, how many students are there at Rockledge Middle School? Now, a couple things about this question are tricky, and it's mostly in how you read the question. Once you understand the question, though, it's actually a fairly simple way to solve it. So here's the information that I've got. 40% of the students are the musicians, and 75% of those musicians read sheet music. Then it tells you that it's 38 students don't read sheet music. And they want to know how many students there are total. Well, I have 38 students here is in relationship to the total number of students. That makes sense. It's part to whole. And obviously my whole is going to be a 100% here, but I don't know what percent this 38 students represents. Well, what it tells us is 75% of the musicians read music. But that means that if 75% of the musicians read sheet music, how many don't read sheet music? And the question then is, well, out of 100% of the musicians, 25% of them don't read sheet music. So what we have to figure out is, what is 25% of 40%? I'm going to do something a little bit different than we've done in the past, and I'm going to go straight because it's easy for me to think about 25% as a fraction. So 25% as a fraction is 1/4. We know that already, right? 50% is 1/2, 25% is 1/4. So what I really need to do is figure out what is 1/4 of 40%. Well, if I took 40% and I divided it into 4 parts, each part would be 10%. So 1/4 of 40% is 10%. So what percent am I actually dealing with here? I'm dealing with 10%. And now that I know that these 38 students, or the ones that don't read sheet music, represent 10% of the school, I'm going to make this absolutely a within ratio problem. So how do I get from 10 to 100? Multiply by 10, multiply by 10. Pretty simple mental math for us. 380 students total in the school. Now again, what was tricky here was figuring out the problem itself, but knowing that you needed percent of a percent. Percent of a percent. Cool.